So the purpose of this study and how the idea came about is that social connections have been associated with lower mortality, improved health outcomes, and better quality of life. And in addition, the literature has shown past from past research that isolation is shown to have a negative impact on cognition, especially in the older population. And very interesting, in the past decade, thanks to the progression of communication technologies, research has seen that communication technologies have been used to actually decrease social isolation. And a great example is what we're doing right now with this video calls and being able to just see each other, even if we are in a different place. We're able to see each other, communicate, share ideas and thoughts. And of course, the current pandemic has created a unique model of social isolation that really has never been studied before, because we're all kind of trying to stay at home, stay safe, keep each other from a distance from others. However, we do want to try to keep connected and engage with others at the same time. So this is a really special model because everyone it doesn't, no matter your age or your socioeconomic status, you kind of have to try to stay isolated as much as possible. And so it may be possible to decrease social isolation brought due to the pandemic and potentially improve cognition, memory, thinking, mood, thanks to being able to kind of stay connected through communication technologies. So that's how everything kind of started. And so our study, our main aim is to better understand the relationship between social interaction and cognitive function in older adults with and without cognitive impairment. And when we talk about cognitive function, we talk about things like memory, things like mood, or even being able to function normally during the daily life, being able to do normal chores of the daily life. And we aim to investigate specifically how the impact of frequent social interactions during the COVID-19 pandemic can have an effect on memory, thinking, and mood, as I was mentioning. So these are like our broad aims, but now we can go in depth more into the procedure. And I know it looks a little bit, it's a nice graph, but I think it presents well what is going to happen, what happens during the study. The study in its overall, it lasts 2 months. However, this doesn't mean that over the 2 months, we're going to be interacting or speaking daily. So as you see from here, we have first an assessment session. So that's where everything starts. And the assessment session is done over the telephone. And actually, that leads me to an important point that I didn't mention, the fact that everything is done remotely, so that you will never need to travel anywhere, and everything can be done from the comfort of your home, which has been working really great. And you don't need any special kind of technology or anything. Really, the major thing that you will need is a landline telephone. Of course, if you do have access to a cell phone, an iPhone, or like any type of video phone, or a tablet, a computer, that gives us the option to also have video interactive calls that potentially could help us understand if actually seeing our faces and not just talking over the telephone could have even a better impact on how you feel on a daily basis, on how your memory is doing, on how you're thinking. And as I was mentioning, everything starts with a little assessment done over the telephone, which lasts around 45 to 60 minutes. And when we start and we have our first baseline session, since that entails a little bit more surveys and questionnaires, because it's where we're starting, we do have that split in 2 parts. So there is a first day that lasts around 45 minutes, and then the second day, which we try to have it like one after the other. So we could start at the beginning of a week, for example, and have a first call on Monday, and then our second call on a Tuesday. And then at that point, you will be done with the first assessment session. And at that point, after 4 weeks, there would be a second assessment session, and it's just one other telephone call, a little bit shorter than the one at the start. And it's still gonna entail some more memory testing, some more thinking testing, and even some other surveys and questionnaires. And I have here, for example, an example of a questionnaire that's really interesting on how do you interact with your transitional spaces at home? So how you're doing in your household and how is that impacting your daily activities? So we'll be covering things like that. And then after 4 weeks, again, there's going to be a final assessment session, very similar to the second one and also to the first one. So very similar. And those, again, are done over the telephone. Then either during the first 4 weeks that you're in the study or during the second 4 weeks in the study, and that's going to be random. So we're not going to be able to tell you if this is going to happen during the first 4 weeks or during the second ones. You're going to be having weekly socially engaging calls with one of our research staff members. And those calls, we usually say that we have 12 calls over 4 weeks, and we try to have 3 calls per week. But this is, it can be variable. We know that everyone's schedule can change even unpredictably. So we can have, for example, I don't know, we could have 1 call the first week, but then have more calls during the last week. So it all depends on your schedule, and we're very flexible on that because we know that it can take a little bit of time over on your day. Those calls last around 15 to 20 minutes, so they're pretty short, and they are light and engaging conversations where we get to talk about any topic of interest that comes to mind. For example, I've been talking with people regarding food, TV shows that you're watching, favorite books, things that you've been reading on the news that are really interesting, or like this winter storm that is been coming. So anything that comes to mind and you would be happy to talk about. And I would wanted to mention that these socially engaging calls can happen over the telephone. That's totally fine. But if you do have the option and you do feel comfortable, we also offer the opportunity to have the social engaging calls over video. And of course, we're happy to share with you and go through all the different steps to maybe set up a video app such as Zoom. I see that all of you that are here were able to log into Zoom, so that should be fine. But we're always happy to give you more opportunities and different softwares that we can use. So we're happy to go through all of that because I know that it can be a little bit tricky the first couple of times that we engage on computers and tablets. So this is what happens throughout the 2 months. And I also wanted to share some more specifics on who can participate in the study. And I would say that our criteria is really flexible because we get to recruit older adults that are between the age of 50 to 100. And it can be healthy older adults or individuals that have had a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment due to Alzheimer's disease, or older adults with a diagnosis of mild Alzheimer's disease dementia. But of course, we're open to different situations. So we're always happy to speak more through all the different criteria and understand better if you actually would be eligible. And I'm going to be the person you would be speaking with if you're interested in participating. So we can talk about all of this together. And as I was mentioning, you will need to have access to a telephone mainly. And then if you do, also a computer or a smartphone. But let's say really a landline phone is what you need to participate. And just to finish, I just wanted to share some experiences that have come through just being part of the study. And most of our participants really want to stay in touch with us, even after the study, which has been really great. And one of my participants actually told me that they feel like they've got to know a new friend. So it's really, even if there might be an age difference, but it's really great to get to know each other. And it's been like, for example, even a great experience for myself. So it's really a binary, like a bi-directional relationship that it builds up. And I've heard that many of our participants share their experience with their families and friends, and they're really happy about what they're doing. And they always look forward to the time of our weekly calls. And I also do, as soon as I see that the time comes to speak with any of our participants, I just pick up the phone and can't wait to start. So it's really great opportunity also to have something on your schedule, to keep engaged, to have something happening during the day. I feel like it's really important for all of us during this time of isolation. And in addition, I think that many of our participants said that they learned how to better use their phones or tablets, computers, and then they, after the study, they really have they're it's much easier for them to speak with their friends from school or with family friends that they haven't spoke with in a long time. They're able to connect with them much easier over the communication technologies that there are today available. So this is just an overview, but of course, we're happy to talk more about any of the details in the breakout rooms later as well.
Thank you so much, Anna. That was great. A really awesome overview of what's going on in our lab. Who do we have? And we'll take questions at the end at the breakout rooms, by the way. So save your questions till then. Who is our next speaker, Raisha?
The next speaker is Christopher.
It's me, Kiefer Christensen, I think.
Yes.
Great. So I can go ahead and share my screen. All right. Can you all see my screen? Perfect. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about the digital technology study, or you can see in quotes there, kind of the nickname is the Dana High Frequency. And our main goal with this study, or with our lab in general, is to understand how we can use technology to understand and address Alzheimer's disease. And so in order to do that, we want to measure your memory and thinking, but we want to, as much as possible, do it in a natural environment. And so that way we can detect things that we might not otherwise been able to. And then lastly, we don't just want to understand your memory and thinking, in terms of disease, but also we want to think about this idea of just promoting your overall brain health. So for this project, that means comparing this digital information to the traditional information that's collected at the BU ADC. So that includes things that some of you may be familiar with, paper and pencil type tests, kind of the way in which you're used to doing it. We want to take that information and then compare it to the information that you do on your smartphone as a part of this study. And one good thing about using the smartphone is that because we can ask you to do really short little tasks, you can do it more often, and then we can see how your memory and thinking might fluctuate, throughout the day or over the course of several weeks or months. And our big goal with all of this is that we want to be able to hopefully one day be able to make it possible for doctors to diagnose people who are having problems with their memory and thinking earlier and more accurately. So in terms of how we selected this application, you might be curious, how did we come up with this one smartphone application? This project was actually, over the last couple of years, we've had a number of different devices and applications. Previously, it involved in-person assessments. So people came into BU and then we sent them home with devices and we asked participants, what did they enjoy using? What was useful? And then also what kind of digital information was useful for us and easy to interpret. And so we asked, we had people use a digital pen, a smartphone applications, measuring their balance, their medical records, all kinds of different stuff. And these little logos are all the different companies and devices that we used. And from those, we found that, certain number of them were really helpful. So those are the ones that I circled there in a red box. And my colleague was actually going to speak to you in a little bit about another project that's very similar. And I'll let her talk about that, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a preview kind of there, if you're wondering why these things seem so similar. But that being said, and you see here I have the active to passive arrow. So that's just to say that some of these applications, we ask you to interact with them. And so that would be active. And some of them are more passive, such as collecting your medical records, where it's not necessarily a whole lot of work for you. It's just more information we can gather about you. So anyway, from all of this kind of informed this current version of the study, which we're talking about now, which is we're looking for 50 participants to do these short at-home tasks, and then we want to compare them to the information from the ADC. And so it's just this one application called Dana, and it's taking what you would usually do in the clinic and it's kind of doing a slice of it at home. So in terms of the study procedures, what it would be like for you, well, first we have some inclusion criteria. So we would do this over the phone. Basically, you need to own a smartphone or an iPad is okay, and be able to connect to the internet. You need to be 40 years of age, and you need to be enrolled in the BUADC with English as your primary language. Exclusion criteria, so reasons why you couldn't join the study would be if you have an implanted medical device or are currently planning to get pregnant in the next 6 weeks, which is everybody's favorite. And the study procedures, in terms of what would actually happen, we would have a remote study visit. So everything is at home over Zoom or over the phone. And since you're all on Zoom right now, I take it you're familiar with that. So we would go over the informed consent to make sure you are aware of everything that's happening. We would download the smartphone application. Then we would do a practice a task. So you would basically do what we're asking you to do, but you do it over Zoom with us to make sure if you have any questions, we can answer them. And then we would, get your communication preferences, because we know sometimes it can be tricky to keep track of technology. And so we want to be in touch with you to send you notifications to complete the assessments. And so we can send you calls, texts, emails. We want to do whatever is best for you. And then we also are providing gift cards, so we can get your preference on what store you'd like the gift card to. And this is a few little pictures of what it would look like on the application. So they're kind of almost like games. And then, so we've talked a lot about the application, and I've said high frequency, but an actual schedule looks a little bit like this. So as a reminder, each assessment takes about 5 minutes, and you can do that whenever it's convenient for you. Of course, we ask you to do it in a place that's quiet, and you won't have distractions, but you can do it in the morning or the evening, whenever it's convenient for you. And the timing is a little bit, it changes over time. So the first week is the most frequent. We ask that you do the app 3 times in the first week, and then 1 time per week for the next 3 weeks, followed by the third segment is once per month for 5 months. And the last segment is once per month for 6 months. And so the reason we have it broken up into these segments is actually to make it seem a little bit, those goals a little bit more reachable. And then we are happy to provide you with that gift card if you complete each segment on time. And so we would send you home both via email and over a piece of paper with a little chart like this, so you can keep track of how you're doing, and we can help keep track with you, just to make sure you know when you're supposed to do everything. And then lastly, the benefits of being in the study, I mentioned the gift card, opportunity to receive up to $100 in gift cards, but really it's also the opportunity to contribute to Alzheimer's disease research and brain research in general. So I think that's everything. Thank you.
Go ahead, Raisha.
Thank you so much, Kiefer. Our next presenter will be Catherine Breedlove, and she will be presenting on cerebral perfusion.
Hi, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Are you guys all able to see the slide? Okay, great. So my name is Catherine Breedlove. I'm a postdoc in the Center for Clinical Spectroscopy at Brigham and Women's Hospital. And we are conducting a study looking at cerebral perfusion and metabolism in chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Now, you're probably wondering why someone who is interested in not Alzheimer's disease is presenting here with the Center for Alzheimer's Disease, but actually chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is a neurotrauma disease that usually occurs following a long participation in contact sports, has a lot of similarities with Alzheimer's disease, especially in clinical presentation at the end of life. Oftentimes people report memory problems, difficulties with language, changes in their personality and emotion, and it has given rise in the literature to question if it is difficult to differentiate between CTE and Alzheimer's disease. So this study is trying to distinguish them through the use of novel, non-invasive MRI imaging technologies. So again, CTE and Alzheimer's disease symptomology-wise are very similar. They are very different on neuropathology. So that would mean if I took a slice of brain and put it under a microscope, I could tell the difference. However, that is extremely invasive and not very helpful for very many people because it always occurs after time of death. So our goal is to utilize a less invasive diagnostic criteria to help people determine which disease they are suffering from so they can have better treatment and more personalized medicine. So our study consists of 3 components. The first is a standard anatomical MRI. So you would go into the MRI machine. These would take anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes long, and we would get very nice high contrast images of the anatomy of the brain. Next is something called an MR spectroscopy. And this is going to be, we call this a virtual biopsy. It's very different from imaging. So instead of getting a nice picture of the components or the structures of the brain, we are able to see concentrations of neurochemicals within the brain. And these are some of the, excuse me, some of these are the most common chemicals that we would look at. Oh, my animation is not working. Okay, there. So the first one we look at is acetyl aspartate, which is a neuronal marker. So basically you want this to be nice and high. It's an indication of how many neurons are functioning nicely in your brain. And it's a really good marker to see how well things are working. Then we have glutamate, which is a neurotransmitter, which we can relate to some types of mood disorders. Creatine, which is the energy marker. So how much is your brain functioning? Is it high energy? Is it low energy? Choline is a membrane marker. So looking at the membranes for the individual neuronal cells and how well and complete are they. And myoinositol is a glial marker, which is a specific type of neuron. So within this, for each person, you'll be able to see how many of these neurochemicals they have in different segments of the brain and how they compare to people who are suspected to possibly have CTE. So people who have a history of playing in contact sports, healthy controls, and people who have Alzheimer's disease. And this segment only takes about 6 to 8 minutes long. We're also very interested in looking at blood flow because metabolism, marker for creatine in the previous slide, and blood flow are highly correlated. So we are using something called arterial spin labeling, which is tracking blood flow in the brain. So this one is a little bit of a longer scan. It's about 10 minutes long. And the person doesn't have to do anything. You just lay there and we're able to track and see blood flow in the brain. In this image here, we can see you have our anatomical image that we took in the middle. And then on either side, we can look at how blood flow is changing through the brain. And you can see the red is higher flow, the yellow is lower flow, and it is different in normal aging versus Alzheimer's disease. So what will participants do? We have a screening form to ensure that you have your MRI compatible, usually that you don't have implantable metal that would be dangerous to you, that you're able to tolerate the MRI scanner, that you're comfortable with the procedure. And then you only have a single 60-minute MRI scan at most at Brigham and Women's Hospital. So you would come to our campus, we have a single scan. Who can participate? We're specifically looking for adult males between the ages of 45 and 74 years old. We would like you to speak English as a first language for consistency, as we have no previous history of stroke or brain injury or concussion that would possibly alter kind of the brain metabolism, and specifically a history of contact sports, such as football, hockey, soccer, rugby, gymnastics, lacrosse, boxing, or other martial sports. And also with that, was not a member of the armed forces. And we are seeking both healthy controls and those with mild cognitive impairment due to Alzheimer's disease. And that is my slide deck. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And our next presenter is Zenko. She will be presenting on digital phenotyping.
Great, thank you, Arisha. Just give me a second to pull this up. You can see my screen right now?
We can. It's a little bit hard to hear you. Is there any way to get closer? Yeah, thank you.
Closer. 1 second, let me stop sharing. Okay, great. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, Kiefer, for setting up a little bit of our study earlier. So I will be following up and adding to his study on the digital technology study for the high frequency.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I'm still finding it a little bit challenging to hear you. Is there any way you can speak a little louder and bring the microphone as close as possible? Thank you.
Of course. I'm usually a very loud speaker, so that's the first time I'm hearing that I'm quiet. So I'll be louder. So essentially, our purpose is to better understand Alzheimer's disease and dementia through the use of different technologies that are going to be both on smartphone applications and wearable devices. And as Kiefer mentioned earlier, we are using this new study building upon his, which initially was a comprehensive study, and now it's looking at the Dana high frequency remote study. And we are using our AHA digital phenotyping study with a multitude of different technologies in order to expand upon the knowledge that we have gained from previous studies, as well as have more data to compare to the clinical data we're receiving from the VUABC. So through these technologies, we are looking to collect data at home. So the study will be completely remotely in terms of the majority of data collection. We are hoping to eventually have participants come into lab for a couple of different physical assessments as well as fitness assessments. And we are then hoping to find subtle differences between groups. We're going to have 3 different cohorts, which I'll get into later. And we're hoping ideally to make it easier to diagnose and treat these conditions through the use of different technologies at a remote, normal setting of their lives. So there will be 2 remote study visits, given that this is a pretty long study. One of them will be an informed consent and technology introduction of about 45 minutes. This will be done over Zoom, and we will connect with you prior to the calls in case you need questions in terms of how to connect with Zoom. Clearly, everyone on this call has had no problems with it. So we are there to help, though. However, in any circumstances that you may need something that you don't necessarily know how to do. And the second part of the study visits will be the applications installation, account creation, and device training. This will happen after you've received the box full of the different technologies that you have signed up for to use. So you can choose your own devices and applications. They will have devices such as devices that track sleep, smartwatches. We're looking at a couple that also look at, it's basically a wearable ring that is looking at your oxygen levels, and applications such as cognition, tracking for your different medical health history and physical health, as well as a couple of other applications that are going to look at your keyboard and typing behaviors. You're going to set your own schedule. We are going to provide a recommended schedule just based on the data that we're looking to receive, but we are going to give participants flexibility to cater the schedule, around their own personal schedules, and just do what feels comfortable for them. It's possible to start really slow and then get more and more frequent data assessments as time passes throughout the 2-year study. So as I mentioned earlier, our team is here to support everyone that is going to be involved in the study, because we understand technology sometimes is a little bit harder, especially when there are new investigational applications and devices. So we are here to support anybody that's going to be on the study via phone, Zoom, or email, whatever works for the participants best. You guys can hear me correctly, right?
Yeah, there's just some feedback that is coming through. That's the issue, but we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty quiet in my apartment. I'm not sure. Sorry about that. So as Kiefer briefly touched upon earlier, we're looking at active applications and passive applications, and as well as wearable devices. Wearable devices, just to repeat, would be things like physical fitness assessments with smartwatches. There'll be different kinds of devices for sleep and oxygen. There'll be active applications where you get to play little games, cognition, memory, thinking, and passive applications that are going to look passively at your computer usage or smartphone usage behavior, such as the keyboard monitoring. Some of the example technologies are Dana. So Dana is the one that Kiefer mentioned earlier. This one will have about 5-minute assessments that will have short games to play. There will be MyMeds, which is an application that you will be using if you'd like to make sure that you're tracking all of the different medications you're taking, as well as adding any information regarding when those medications expire, when they're supposed to be renewed. This is to help you figure out if you'd like anything to help you with the tracking of everything you're taking. There's Lumosity, which is a commercial application actually, and it has a lot of different brain games I know that we have the premium version for the application, so you can play games any frequency you like as much as you want. I use Lumosity. I think it's very fun to use, and it's just something to pass the time as well. There will be either a Fitbit or a Garmin watch. We are still waiting to hear back from some of our study partners. And then there will be, as I mentioned, the Check Me ring oximeter, which is going to measure your oxygen levels, and the Dream headband, which tracks sleep. So the study visit schedules will be the study visit where you have all the informed consent. Then for the in-person, you will have a body composition and functional fitness assessment. But then these are the kinds of trackings that we're looking to get: physical activity, cardiovascular health, cognitive assessments, speech and language, sleep, medication, typing and tapping, and medical history. So I know it sounds like a lot, and this is the first time that we're doing something to this scale, but we are willing to work with all of our participants to work through each of the different devices to understand how they work, as well as cater to your needs and your comfort levels. So the remote data collection will happen once every 3 months. We're looking to have about a 2-week time span that you can use these devices. So just make sure that we have everything collected within those 2 weeks. However, it does not mean you need to use anything for 2 weeks. That is up to you to decide on. But we're going to send reminders before the 3-month time assessment. And we will let you know whether you need to set up a different application, how to re-download, and everything else. And then the medication intake, typing, and medical history, those are all that once you log in and make an account that we will provide logins for, then you can just leave it on your phone and you can use it as much as you like, or not at all. So inclusion and exclusion is going to be similar to what Keeper said earlier. You have to be at least 4 years of age. You must own a smartphone. You're enrolled at the BU-ADC studies because we need clinical data to compare our data to. English needs to be your primary language, and you need to be able to connect to the internet using a smartphone at your residence. Exclusion criteria includes implanted medical devices such as pacemakers and defibrillators. You cannot be currently pregnant or planning to get pregnant in the next 6 weeks. So additional study information to maybe address some potential questions. There's no cost to participate in the study. However, there's also no compensation for the study except for the parking vouchers. I do think, however, that it is really important to get access to this kind of technology that you would not have access to outside of this particular study without payment, or some of the ones that are investigational without being involved in other studies. It's going to be a 2-year study where you will be asked to do quarterly assessments, and we will box all the different technologies and send them to you, as well as provide paid postage for returning them after your 2-week assessment period. As I mentioned, we'd like to get body composition if possible and fitness assessments once or twice a year, once COVID allows us. And the technology, as I mentioned earlier, will build on the digital technology frequency study, just with a more extensive platform. Participant recruitment is now beginning this month, so I'm very excited for that, and I'm excited to meet with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all our speakers today. And for anyone that would like more information or more information about these studies, or would like to participate in any of the studies, my contact information is here, my phone number and email. And then also in the chat box, I will put our newsletter sign up as well.